si prezentuj Emre Arolatin, një nga arkitektë më të mëdhenj turk. Përpos që e ka studin e vetë, Emre e ka edhe, është edhe profesor. Përpos që të janë edhe botime që janë të prodhu tash për studion e tina, njëna për të në është edhe botimi që ka dalë para 2-3 muajve Ricullit, nëse keni e mundësi, në po është shumë interesant, që ka zonë një histori bajnë të bushme të këtij studiut. Pa e zgjatë shumë, kisha pasur qef mëftu Emrin për ligjerat.
Hello everyone. I didn't understand anything what he said, but I hope it's okay. My name is Emre Arolat and I'm coming from Istanbul, Turkey, and with Gonca Pasholar. I'm one of the co-founders of EAA, Emre Arolat Architects, and our main office is in Istanbul, and our London office will be open very soon in August. Especially in recent years, I've been invited to many events of all kinds to give a lecture, attending jury meetings or participate some panels, architectural weeks like that of different cities, festivals, real estate shows, and many other organizations. But frankly speaking, since the world of architecture is getting more and more crowded and shallow, I take a critical and very selective position on that in deciding where to go, and in this context I like to say that I'm very happy to be here and honored to be here in Pristina. And first of all I want to thank all the promoters, and of course especially Bekim, for letting me to be here in this precious educational environment. Tonight I'm planning to talk about generally architecture and context, not in a broad sense maybe, but specifically within the framework of Turkey, and maybe more specifically about Istanbul. Saying Istanbul, it's too big. That's okay. We all know that in societies which are under the influence of capitalism, glamorous, charming, and seductive sources are increasing rapidly, and the object of desire are everywhere in the world. Let's say Porsche in Qatar, Saxony in Abu Dhabi, Maybach in Moscow. With the help of charmed globalization, let's say, the world is no longer a big planet for some of us. On the other hand, today's time-serving relationships and new kind of communication techniques are releasing the sense of place, which is very important. And the distinctive qualities of locality and the notion of belonging to the place are losing their importance day by day. This is a climate of all that is solid melts into air, as Marshall Berman stated ingeniously, in my opinion. And no matter in which geography, sparkling, flashy and dashy high-rises emerge as the new symbols of the cities. Off the record, most of the time investors are using those symbols as their weapons and show off, and kick-ass architects are transforming to be their agents. I think that it won't be wrong to consider this situation as an epiphany of neocolonialism. Okay, now let me tell you a bit about the current socio-political climate in Turkey. The government of Erdogan is in power since more than 11 years. To speak honestly, they made a big move during the last decade, and our country prospered very rapidly in those days. And construction sector was somehow the principal engine of this regime's economic policy. But on the other side, we all know that it's a kind of an uncanny situation. Especially after 2005, and especially in Istanbul, in the big cities of Turkey, every single day a brand new project came to the market. Without any master plan, all the vacancies has been the subject of a delirium manipulated by the government. For example, the third airport terminal and the third bridge are two gigantic projects which are under construction. Some of you may know Istanbul. I'm sure that you have been in Istanbul before, some of you. It's a metropolis with about 15 million. The northern part is relatively empty, but full of water reservoirs and forests. They serve as the elixirs of the city. From right to left, the three musketeers, I say, the third bridge in the north of the Bosphorus, as you can see, the third airport, and our very clever deep project, let's say, Channel Istanbul, which is the brand new project, are joining forces to destroy this ecological system. No one should be smart to guess that the lack of water will be the biggest issue in the city in a very near future. And in AEAA, in our office, which is one of the largest scale architectural offices in Turkey, we are facing this situation very frontally. But even in this atmosphere, I believe that instead of being affirmative or, let's say, a kind of current capitalist systems agent, without questioning what's going on, we believe that a producing architect should take a critical position and undertake a more opponent role, if you want. Even in this atmosphere, instead of being defined only as producing well-designed or good-looking buildings, we consider our practice as an activity about raising fresh ideas by learning from people, from roots, tradition, sometimes different contexts, sometimes even wind, sun, rain, dialectics, and of course new techniques. In our work, very roughly I can say that human life and the city are two main fields of study, and so potentials of public benefits and sensitivity about the context are the main issues in our practice. We believe that this situation charges the architect with a responsibility which is much more important and definitely more complicated than being an unconcerned producer of this image industry, let's say, or a mediator of the society of spectacle. Now, since I'm not one of these star architects, I want to give you some brief information about my professional background. By doing that, I'm aiming at the same time to give you the first impression about Turkey's Republican forming years. Then I'll try to forward you some clue about current sociological, political, urban and architectural context in Istanbul. And after that, I will represent you some projects which have been realized lately in this specific context. And finally, I will describe one of our projects more deeply as a, let's say, distinctive example of my architectural approach, maybe our position in the intellectual field in Turkish architectural world. As you may know, Istanbul was the capital city of the Ottoman Empire during nearly 500 years, and Atatürk, who is the founder of Republic, decided to move governance center to the central part of Anatolia and assigned Ankara as the new capital in 1922. I can say that it was a quite critical decision, and as you can see, this new capital was looking like a big village rather than a real city in those days. My mother is from Bursa and my father is from Ankara, but they both have studied architecture in Istanbul, in Technical University. And right after their marriage, they moved to Ankara in 1961 because of my father's military service. And during those days, the city was extremely small compared to Istanbul. In one sense, it was the fortress of republicanism and one of the most distinctive symbols of Turkish westernization. On the other hand, the city was dealing with a funny kind of urbanization because executives of the government were struggling to transform people's sociological situation, and they were trying to create a new class of urbanite from a faction of peasants. And it was an iconic and ironic dilemma for the young republic. Meanwhile, my parents have established their first office, our Arolat architects in Ankara, and we were participating to architectural competitions in order to get a single job. And they did it. After some other prizes, they won the first prize in the competition of Zonguldak Hospital, which you can see, bottom, in the beginning of 1963, and I came to this earth just after this victory. As a result of this win, they were having a sense of self-confidence, and they have participated to some other competitions as well. And they were quite successful indeed, and had the chance to see some of the projects as completed buildings. But life was not easy at all, and the state was their unique client, and to tell you the truth, not a convenient one. And after 7 years of hard work in Ankara, they moved to Istanbul in 1968. It was, of course, a much more vibrant, dynamic, and crowded city. In those days, social problems and political fights were standing out, and the spirit of 68 was up and doing. At the same time, the amount of private sector's investments were increasing day by day, and rather than this time state hospitals, this time a variety of private investment projects were on board in Arolat's Istanbul office. In 1986, I graduated from the university in Istanbul and went to the United States. I found a job in an architectural office in Washington, D.C., and after a very pleasant and very profitable year in Georgetown, once again I was in Istanbul and joined to my parents. It was just the beginning of my 17 years of partnership with them. As a brief summary, I can easily say that Arolat Architects was my principal university, but within this 17 years of struggle, I felt that I should graduate from there, and architecture itself was not our main field of problem, but as two different generations, we had some different imaginations about positioning the office, let's say, in the market. Gonca was one of my colleagues in Arolat Architects. In 2004, we founded Emre Arolat Architects together and moved to one of my friend's office for a short term. And I think it was the most critical milestone of my career. I was lucky one more time. The wind was coming from behind, and we were having lots of work. Most of them were quite challenging, and we were becoming more and more sensitive about context and situation. We were 6 architects, and I was thinking in those days that it was an ideal scale for an architectural office, 6 people. After a year of sojourning, let's say, we moved to a much larger office in Etiler. It was 2005, and we were about 25 this time. I was thinking that it was my borderline, and it was enough. How could I guess that will be 100 just in 3 years? In 2008, we moved to another office again in the same area with more than 100 people. This time my parents closed their office and finally joined to our team, and to say the truth, this made me extremely happy. We are still at the same office and don't think to move again, hopefully, at least at the moment. Now getting started to talk about the Turkish context, I'd like to mention a lecture that I gave 2 years ago in London Festival of Architecture. Let me give you a quick summary about that. In this talk, I tried to remark some similarities between 2 cities and raise the question, is Istanbul on the way of Londonization? Yes, I made up this idiom from this lecture, for this lecture. Londonization is an absurd word maybe, but actually I still believe that it fits very conveniently to describe Istanbul's latest kind of transformation. I'll try to open up the subject. Let's go back to 40 years ago to London. The relationship between the central government and local authorities in UK seemed to be balanced and nearly non-problematic up until the 70s. But after 1979, the Conservative Party was in power, and their approach was quite different with Margaret Thatcher, with Iron Lady's vision. the support and help supplied from the central to local authorities was reduced instantly. Public expenses were minimized, and with the effect of Americanized liberal economy approach, private sector boomed. At that time, New Urban Left was using authorities as a platform to oppose the Conservative Party. And I can easily say that a very similar movement is getting stronger nowadays in Istanbul, especially after Gezi events, as you probably know. Well, actually, during those days, at the bank of the river of Thames, that was a game between the New Right and New Urban Left. And in these days, we are faced with a resembling and comparable game in Istanbul. Again, back on those days, economical and social politics of the era brought the foreign capital to London, as we all know, and the city has been affected intensively from that stream, and started to experience a major urban transformation. At this point, we can have a closer look to Istanbul and do a parallel reading. Actually, we all know that Margaret Thatcher was a conservative leader. I mean, people were saying this, and she was saying that also. And London's most spectacular urban transformation came off in this era, in her era. Ironically, the most important transformations in the cities of Turkey occurred during the times of the conservative leaders. But of course, in a very unconservative way. Menderes in 50s, Özal in 80s. Sometimes I ask myself this question, why do we keep calling them conservative? Didn't they do the most crazy urban transformations? A phenomenon which can be called New Istanbul is a surviving concept, is a 60 years of daydream, and nowadays our Prime Minister Erdogan is the one who keeps the same flag flying. But I think we can stop for a while and gossip a little bit now, just for a minute. Some of the participants of this lecture in London, King's Cross, especially some architects, didn't like to accept the similarities I put through. And they were angry, and they suggested that Istanbul's urban transformation is more Dubai-esque rather than being London-esque. Actually, I remember that I found this determination too Western and even snobbish, because pairing Istanbul with Dubai was extremely funny indeed. And at one side, one of the most ancient and multi-layered cities of the world. On the other side, one of the newest, which is a real city since only 40 years. And they don't even have mosquitoes in Dubai. Anyway, let's talk a bit about the different phases of this new Istanbul phenomenon. Because with the effect of rapid growth and urbanization, the cultural accumulation between the different classes flattens. Well, we might say that this actually brings out new potentials for the city, and the fields for a city. But nonetheless, urban and social segregation this time start to appear in the scene, and unfortunately, dangerous liaisons and imaginations are replacing these potentials. Here you see some photos of gated communities, which nowadays appear everywhere in Turkey, and most importantly, for every socio-economic classes, wealthier or poorer. Everyone wants to live in those gated communities, inside of the security wall, with the security guys, with some stars and black shorts like me. This is what we can call a kind of urban segregation, maybe more than social segregation, and it is one of the most serious problems in Istanbul, in my opinion. Actually, nowadays, urban transformation is a nasty issue, and transformation of Sulukule, for example, is a dramatic example. Not maybe physically, but sociologically, it was one of the most interesting neighborhoods in Istanbul, in the old town. And here you can see some pictures of the construction. At this point, we can, or maybe we should ask this simple and one-word question: why? What happened to the urban context, to the spatial aura, or to the sociological and the historical layers of the region? they destroyed everything. It's a pity that any former resident is living in Sulukule after this harsh movement of, let's say, gentrification. And can we talk about identity, about this situation? I don't think so. Having seen all that, another window can be opened as follows. One of the most important features of the Turkish context, current Turkish context, is the dominance of the world of spectacle. As a product of neoliberal politics, the spectacle has become one of the most important features of the society. Actually, this climate can be very dangerous when it is not considered with a sort of sophistication, because especially for architecture, it can be even a disaster. One of these dangerous appearances of such medium is themed architecture. Here you can see the image of a skyscraper to be built in Istanbul. What I find interesting is the fact that its architect can easily step up and say that he designed this building being inspired by the symbol of Istanbul, the tulip. And I have to say that we were very lucky. You know, tulip is a quite innocent stuff, and imagine what if he did something else to be inspired. Worse than this, the same architects talk about identity every time, identity of Istanbul. I would prefer to forget about this word of identity. And sadly, this kind of superficial symbolism, let's say, is becoming a genre of local delirium. And another example of such is the Venezia project, just in the middle of Istanbul. In this project, there are 65 centimeter high canals in front of skyscrapers. And in this old scene of Venice, people get on gondolas with Turkish gondoliers, Ahmet, Mustafa, instead of Giovanni or Peppino. They are okay. And there are even more freak examples. Here you'll see another project, again related with water, and the name of the project is Bosphorus City. You know that Bosphorus is a natural canal between the Marmara and Black Sea, and it is dividing Istanbul into two, separating the European part and the Asian continent. And approximately 40 kilometers away from the real Bosphorus, to the western side, on a land of really garbage dump, a new project is being built, and the name is Bosphorus City. What you see here is an axonometric grandeur of this project, which is a very ugly thing in my opinion. I'm sure that you could notice the bluish pseudo-Bosphorus in the middle. And you know that French philosopher Baudrillard used the word simulacrum according to his definition in today's modern world, especially in the societies governed with neoliberal politics. The simulacrum can easily replace its originals. And apparently this project shows us how Baudrillard appears to be right. As you can see in these images, the new project includes caricaturized versions of houses along the weird Bosphorus. These two are actual photographs of the completed part of the project. And finally, at the end of the day, even the Bosphorus Bridge appears as one of the most kitsch objects in the world. It's blue. And another issue that is quite striking is the global acceptance of this kind of simulacrum. About 5 years ago, during the first phase of this project, I saw Julio Iglesias in the newspapers as the main promotional figure and found this quite bizarre. What kind of connection could we imagine between Bosphorus City and a romantic oldie or a former goalkeeper of the Real Madrid? At short notice, I realized that I'm a pigeon, because sales went like a bomb. People were lining up to have a house in this dump site. And 2 years after this great success, this time somebody who is much more on the boil was on the scene for the second phase of the project. Yes, Mr. Jose Mourinho. Now you can see a movie, but we have a problem with the sound of the movie. He's saying that if you want to make something, do it first, because history remembers the first. What a statement. And, for example, first atomic bomb, which killed thousands of children, or first dictator who killed thousands of people because they were not Aryan. But who cares? History remembers first. Anyway, I hope you have some more idea or better sense about current Turkish context after this summary. I would like to say or underline once again that in our office we are facing this situation very frontally. In this part, I would like to pass over some of our latest projects very quickly in order to give you a general idea about our office's architectural approach in different scale. Some of them are recently completed buildings and others are ongoing projects. The first group is about 10 different housing projects, and most of them, actually 7 of them, are in Istanbul, and the others are in Izmir and Bodrum, except the one in Bodrum, which you can see, okay, no problem, the right-hand side in the middle. They are it's on board, but the others are done. They finished, they are all constructed and in use for the moment. And in the second group, we can see some of our cultural projects, offices and factory buildings. At the top you see a textile factory which was built in Edirne, and we won the Aga Khan Award with this factory building in 2010, and today we saw the exhibition with Bekim, and this building is there. With the help of a simple planning strategy, I can say, we tried to remove the difference between administrative and working class in this project. And beside that, inner gardens, which provides the workers fresh air and light, were found important by the jury. At the bottom, 2 projects under construction, a high-rise office at left side, and the Turkish Embassy building in Prague, Czech Republic, at right. Another office project in Kağıthane, which is a densely developed area in Istanbul, as some of you may know. In spite of investors' expectation about a very fancy high tower, this complex is designed as low-rise fragmented blocks, and in that way the projects can exist with the texture of the city as a matching part. And in order to fortify this, let's say to manage a kind of melding, the facades are designed as an abstraction of the existing texture of surface. And on the other hand, the voids between the fragmented blocks are designed very carefully as common spaces. Now we are moving to airport terminals. The first one at the top is Dalaman International, which is in use since 2006. In a quite hot climate, the main and very simple designed mass is placed under a secondary roof, and this causes the building 40% less energy when you compare it to this kind of buildings in similar geographies. The one at the bottom is the Çukurova Regional Airport, where you can see a very similar approach. And we are still working on this project, and the construction is nearly begun. But the company is looking for some credits for the moment. However, this time, in this project, the second roof, let's say, is designed parametrically as a wide green roof, looking like an interpretation of the West agricultural lands in the area, and in this way the huge structure almost disappears in the context. This is a group of touristic buildings. The one at the top is a very challenging project going on Antakya, one of the most historical cities in Turkey, because we planned a museum hotel just on top of the ruins from Hellenistic era. Below with the ruins is going to be a public museum, and the hotel is going to be placed above. And high steel columns are placed where the ruins allow them, very carefully and by hand, not using the machines. And the rooms are designed as prefabricated boxes will be constructed out of the site, and they put some of them to the construction site, and it's a very enthusiastic thing for me also. And the others are different hotels in Istanbul, Antalya, and Çeşme. This is a group of 2 leisure buildings, a model park in Antalya at left side, and the Yalıkavak Marina in Bodrum at right. They both are trying to use Mediterranean routes, and here you can see some cultural buildings at left from top to bottom, cultural centers of Eyüp and Bergama. At right you see the contemporary art museum called Central Istanbul. Another cultural center in Yalova. It's a city of wonderful arboretums and natural parks, but at the same time there are many large production plants, and the city has a kind of dichotomy of natural and industrial sites. And this building is a donation of those companies actually who uses the city as their backyard for production and pollute it mercilessly. For example, this was a competition, and the investor was the investor of Ak Merkez, which is a very brilliant mixed-use building in the middle of Istanbul. And it was the competition. And our approach was a critical one, and our idea was showing them that it shouldn't be a kind of a legitimization of this pollution by building a glorious center as a hush money. And in that sense, rather than fancy materials and handsome looking or this kind of things, our proposal was like a kind of abundant industrial bulk in a very gentle landscape. No one can say that it's a beautiful building. Sometimes we are not looking for beautiful buildings. It's even slovenly in a way, but it's perforated with its perforated corten scheme. But when you get inside, everybody can get inside freely without any security, without any door. There are several openings. It would be a surprising experience for people. I still can't believe it, but they accepted the project in the competition. It was kind of a big challenge for me to even presenting the project to the owners was a big challenge, but they decided to build it and they did it, and it's a very surprising period for me. This one is another museum. It's in Istanbul, in the middle of Istanbul, and where Turkey's extensive collection is going to be exhibited. The collection is now possessed by Mimar Sinan University. This is my university of fine arts. Actually, one of the existing entrepot buildings in Istanbul harbor area is being transformed into becoming this museum. And the existing structure of the building is protected as it is, but all the exterior walls and existing slabs are being removed. Instead of all these container-looking exhibition units are going to be placed into this structural grid. While wondering around the exhibition halls, the three-dimensional grid of structure and the surrounding physical environment can easily be seen. Some educational buildings at top science center and Middle East Technical University in Ankara, and at bottom, the new campus of Abdullah Gül University in Kayseri. Yes, we designed some large-scale mixed-use complexes also, and I'm not sure that it will be meaningful to say that, but I can easily indicate that public realm, or more precisely, public benefit is always on the backbone of our design of these projects. And finally, some urban-scale projects in Ankara and Istanbul. The project that I'll present more deeply today is a mosque in Istanbul. In Turkey, even today, when you design a new mosque, the first thing that you have to face is the figurative burdens of a classical Ottoman mosque is a weird anachronism, let's say. Okay, we all know that the Ottoman mosque was based on a certain structural logic, and on the other hand, I personally find them extremely beautiful. I adore their volumetric composition and with their unique proportions. I believe that they make Istanbul's silhouette matches. And today, I mean, after about a half millennium, even though the construction techniques are totally renewed, the general expectation from a new mosque is still for a replica or just occasionally for an interpretation. If somehow you want to question the main scheme or even the common form from the classical one, you should be sailing close to the wind. Actually, here you see a newspaper article from 2010. This is about a new mosque project in Istanbul, and the headline is Ataşehir Mosque will be Erdogan's early creation, çıraklık eseri. Actually, our Prime Minister getting more and more like a sultan, or a kadı, even the chief architect of Turkey. And this is one of his latest creations. You can easily realize that this is a clumsy replica of 16th century Ottoman mosque called Selimiye. And here, you see the original Selimiye, which is in Edirne on the left, and the Ataşehir Mosque in Istanbul on the right. Don't they look alike? Very similar to each other, right? Maybe yes, maybe no. In terms of their relation to the context, they have nothing to do with each other, in my opinion. This is the problem that we are facing every day, and we are kind of accustomed to see this type of brand new mosque everywhere in the country. Generally, we don't question them. Here, the one on the left, a replica combined with a supermarket, and for the one on the right, I guess rather than minarets, you can think that 6 rockets will start their engines soon, and with this proportion. There are some erratic examples too, some bizarre shapes or weird decorations. And as I said before, even new and modern examples built by contemporary architects in Turkey stick to the basic form of Ottoman's classics. And they are, in my opinion, just better iterations of, or let's say, interpretations. In a context where you can see all of this, our clients, Sancaklar Vakfı, Sancaklar Foundation asked us to design a mosque. This foundation is a kind of fraternal organization, and they are taking care of different kind of buildings all over the country. Of course, they build some mosques also. Here you see one of them. As a matter of fact, they were very proud of it and showed me some pictures saying that the mosque is an extremely progressive one. As you can see, once again, it sticks to the basic scheme of the classics, but this one has some greenish curtain walls with reflecting glass, as you can see. I understood that this hipster part of the building was generously enough to make them happy. And after this conversation about the foundation's intentions, the head of them stated this time they were looking for something else, but this is it. That was the whole brief of the project. I was always interested in Islamic philosophy and trying to follow all kinds of evolutions in the field of Islamic place of worship. However, I asked them some time, well, something like 3 or 4 months, without drawing anything about the project, but only to make some more researches and some readings to refresh my mind once again. Surprisingly, they accepted that, because everybody is very hurried in Turkey in these days. I'm sure that if they would do that, knowing what will happen after this period. In conclusion, we rediscovered that in the Islamic philosophy, the place of prayer doesn't have any certain form. There is no formal definition for a mosque in Quran or in any other source. We saw that mosque buildings or spaces diversified under the influence of different cultures through the history, and in that case we try to reach the essence of the ritual of praying rather than searching some new and extravagant forms. We stated that the form is a flexible shell which protects the essence from the changes of time. And as times and conditions change, sticking to a specific form and preventing the shell from its inherent transformation damages the essence. And the essence can be everlasting only when the form is ephemeral. Once more, we realize that going back to the roots, to antiquity, can give us a way of radicalization. And when to the first era, masjid simply means a place to prostrate. It does not dictate any form. It has to be clean, that's it. That's the only condition. So in a way, everywhere on earth can be a masjid or a praying place. Take the cave Hira, for example. It's an important place for Islam. Muslims believe that Muhammad received his first revelations from God in this cave, and it was mentioned to be the perfect place for him. To be alone with God, where he found peace and solitude, where he felt closest to Allah. It's an example of modesty and humbleness, in my opinion. However, today, this place is far away from this type of modesty or solitude. During the Hajj, around 5,000 Muslims a day climb up 600 steps to see the place. Nowadays, the cave of Hira is a contaminated touristic place. A very good example of such contamination is Mecca itself, where the Kaaba is the most sacred site in Islam. Over the years, Mecca has transformed from the center of the earth to the center of tourism. It has grown drastically with 7-star hotels neighboring to Kaaba. Nowadays, it's a kind of prime real estate asset, even in Turkey. Big construction companies build luxury homes and hotels. I think with this kind of intentions, Islamic architecture is passing beyond a dangerous period. It's the danger of losing its virtue, its identity, or its specificity. Its modesty, nobleness, humility, let's say its unpretentiousness. Take Sheikh Zayed Grand Mosque in Abu Dhabi as an example. You know, this mosque is one of the latest landmarks of Islamic architecture, and it became famous for having the biggest carpet in the world, and its huge custom-made chandeliers. It's a place for diplomatic visits. It's a tourist attraction. And generally people don't come here to pray, but to take photographs on Facebook, Instagram. It's a place to see and to be seen. I remember once again Guy Debord's brilliant early warning text, The Society of Spectacle, or La Société du Spectacle. Okay, I think we can go back to the essence now, once again with the mark of modesty, humbleness and humility. Once again, having the phrases of Raphael Moneo in our minds, listening to the whisper of the place. Sancaklar Mosque is located in Büyükçekmece at the outskirts of Istanbul. The land has a lovely view overlooking the lake, and it's an initial photo of the site. As you can see, the land had a mild slope. Beside this, I like this wide-looking landscape so much. Well, I have to say that the backbone of the design was based on multiple criteria, but I can easily specify and highlight some of them. Maybe more important than the others, our main aim was favoring the spiritual and physical pleasure. Of course, I'm talking about the pleasure of praying. Rather than investing on a specific structural language, the search for such a soul was the one that we pursued most. After all the readings and discussions we made in the team, we agreed that this was a very precious but also very challenging and even dangerous road to take. But we did it. Our first works came out as studies where the form has completely retreated We try to discard all cultural burdens which could affect the purity of consciousness. Material and light presented themselves in their purest ways, almost as a primitive inner world. How we did it, as I told you shortly before, decided a mild slope, and we thought we could play with topography a little bit without spoiling this lovely fit, but gently manipulating the ground like this. We saw that we could turn the upper part into a courtyard with a view. By placing the main space below, we aimed for the building to disappear in the slope of the land. And in this way, the whole building could turn into a part of a place. Maybe even as if it had been there all the time, who knows. With the help of a simple slit, we got natural light into the main hall below. And here you can see the current section of the main praying hall. And the natural light, which is washing the Qibla wall during the day, reflects all kinds of colors as the only decoration of the space. Actually, it's not wrong to say that this mosque is trying to tackle with the formalist attitude of mosque architecture in Turkey. In this respect, we try to suppress the architectural language as much as possible, and while approaching the land, we almost see nothing than a courtyard enclosed by horizontal walls and a vertical mass, which is the minaret. And the minaret of Sancaklar Mosque signifies the place. A closer look to the minaret and entrance of the upper courtyard. Let's go back to side plan again. You can see how lonely is the land in a way, because since the main road is traversing on the maximum layer, it cuts all the visibility with the neighbors, and I confess that I'm very happy about that. Let's see closer. There are three main entrances to the land. Red is from upper level, blue is lower level entrance. It is serving as an elderly access as well. The minaret and the funeral place. From the other side. Now let me walk you from the courtyard and then through a lovely slope down to the prayer hall. From the courtyard downwards, cascades following the natural slope turn into stairs. And you reach the lower level where you can find the entrances of the main hall and the ablution rooms, together with a small tea house, a library, and some other gathering spaces. Actually, nobody asked us to put these additional functions, and there were some rejections in the beginning, to say the truth, of the design process, but everyone is very happy to use them now, and I'm happy to. Let's go to the ground floor or lower level plan. Here you see the prayer hall with three entrances, one of women and two for men, ablution rooms, the imam's house at the right hand side, the library and tea house on the bottom, and the open air sitting areas. Lower or secondary entrance of the courtyard. Again, some views from the lower courtyard. The timber blinds of the library facade. It's a kind of outer meditation space. Some space and Imam house entrance at the left side. The entrance of ablution room. Some local slate stone is used in all part of the project, the minaret, walls, cascades and stairs. Like the old Islamic Ottoman complexes, this is a place for praying as well as gathering. And and for example, the entrance of library and the tea house with open-air seating area. And we are inside. The Qibla wall, minber and mihrab. Unlike the conventional mosque in Turkey, at least, here women can pray at the forefront. It was very important for me, and I defend this idea in a very enthusiastic way, and we did it. Especially on Fridays, the mosque is full, which can show us kind of a success, because when the building is beautiful or when you have some real good photographs for the architectural magazines, it's not a success if people don't use it and don't like to pray here. But between you and me, we as architects like much more this kind of secluded pictures. I think that all over the world architects are snobs. Sorry about that. For the students, you will be snob also. Because we like this kind of, geometrical photographs, not the crowded one. A philosopher and a professor of Islamic studies, Sayyid Hussein Nasr, says that there's a deep difference between the Christian and Islamic architectures. Christian architecture's products appears as a monument, as an entity in the middle of the world. But in Islamic architecture, it's shaped as a void, enclosed by matter, or in other words, it's a void carved into the entity. I always question that kind of generalizations, but I think what we did fits with this idea. Let me read you a quotation from Quran, even if I'm not an expert, but this is my favorite. Don't walk upon the earth bragging. You can't claim the earth, and you can never reach up to the sky. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much for a very inspiring lecture. Moskeni Putin.
Hello, Mr. Emre. I'm studying in Cyprus, so basically, I'm kind of informed with Istanbul culture and everything. And basically, last design was we had to design a mixed-use building in Ortaköy Square next to Kosovo Bridge. And I saw that you designed some of the mixed-use buildings, and I wanted to ask you, how was the connection between the gated houses and all those very tall apartments in the mixed-use buildings? And the other question would be, you said it by yourself that mostly the mosques in Istanbul have more that symbolic look with all those domes and everything. So basically what we saw in the design that you did is more something like solid masonry, like linear shapes. So how was, I had the chance to, we had one class to design a mosque, and basically having such an idea, had such a creativity, was somehow not allowed for us, because they still want the dome. Because they still want that symbolic dome.
Who are they?
Other architects. So basically, how did you bring the...
You're an architect also, right?
Architect to be. Okay, so how did you bring those simplicity in such a very complex form?
Okay, about mixed use, it's always a big challenge for the architects to have everything inside. For example, in our Istanbul's examples, there are 5 different functions: the hotel, the retail, residences, offices, performing arts center, the biggest performing arts center of Istanbul. And it's a big challenge to organize them without any, let's say, without any traffic jam, without any corruption, without anything. But Rather than this, they should fit in the context of the city, which is the most problematic thing, because investors are always looking for some extra square meters, for some big buildings, for bigger and bigger things to sell them. And they don't care, generally they don't care about the context, about the city. And this is a kind of negotiation. And architecture, in my opinion, is a matter of negotiation with the client, with the subject, with the city, with the people who will see and use the building. And I can come to your second question with this topic, because this most, in my opinion, if there is a success in this subject, the success is on the negotiation, because I had to convince first the client, second people, and the third, maybe one of the most challenging thing, was the Muslim, let's say, abiler, brothers, I mean, the Muslim people. And okay, if you believe that you do the right thing, you have to fight until the end of your blood, and then sometimes you do it, sometimes the others, as you said, they can beat you, but sometimes you can do it. And an architect couldn't stop to fight for the right, for the thing that he believes or she believes. And I mean, it was simple, but I think that reaching to simplicity is not a simple thing. Simplicity can be very close to the ordinary, and something should not be ordinary sometimes. And to be able to get rid of this trap, let's say, you should be very careful, because minimalism or the simplicity can be really close to the ordinary.
Hello. I have a question about the hotel that was built over the ruins, and the question is, why there?
It's a long story, but I try to summarize. The land is in Antakya, which is Antioch, the old Antioch, which is a very important city, and it's covered with all ruins. And nobody is doing any basement floor when they do a construction, not to face with ruins. But everybody is doing something on it. In this land, the owner of the land wanted to make a hotel. And in Anatolian side of Turkey, I don't know why, but Hilton is a brand. I mean, Hilton is very famous. Everybody wants to have a Hilton. Not Sheraton, not even Mandarin Oriental, they don't know about that, but Hilton is okay. And they went to Hilton, and they talked with the management of Hilton, and they took a program from them. And Hilton accepted to have an hotel there, to manage a hotel there. And there were another architect in commission for this job. And then afterwards, they started to dig, and they were trying to find somewhere in this 20,000 square meter of land, which is not covered by ruins, and then with which they can put the hotel block. And then they dig everywhere in this site. But in a day, they saw that all the land is covered by something. And then at that time, a commission from the Heritage Committee came to the land, and they saw this, and with the museum, they said, okay, you can't do it, you can't do anything on it, or you will close everything and then leave them like this underneath, or you have to make a scientific excavation. And the owner was very, at the same time excited and complicated. And he said, okay, why don't we do a kind of scientific excavation? And they produced a new team, a scientific team, to make a proper excavation. And then at that time they said that they have to find another architect to be able to design this weird thing. And they called me from this commission. They said, okay, there is something which is a little bit crazy. Can you come and see this? I said, okay, why not? And by coincidence, my daughter came from the United States. She's studying architecture there. And then we went together with her. And at the time that I saw the land, I said, okay, this is not possible. You can't do anything in this land. And my daughter was very disappointed. And she said, why not, Daddy? You can do something, blah, blah. I said, no, it's no chance. And you have to cover everything and leave it like that. But afterwards, I said, okay, maybe we can try to do something. And because I was at that time feeling responsible for these ruins, because there's a mosaic which is 16 meter wide and 100 meter long, which is the biggest in situ mosaic, which is in a good shape for the moment. And it's a pity that people don't see it. But it's a private land. It's not government owned, and people can't do any museum, anything as a private landowner. And then it was a kind of chaotic situation, and afterwards I said, okay, I will try to do something. And then we made this weird project, because when you do a hotel in the government, the government can let you do a museum as well, but you can't do this kind of a museum. It's a private museum. You can't do it with all these ruins. And the owner doesn't have any money to do all this museum, and then it's not getting any money. I mean it's not a realistic job for them. But when you put a hotel on this land, this is doable. And then I present the project to the Heritage Committee as an adventure, because I would say that I was not expecting that they will accept our project, but they liked the project and they said, okay, this is a new kind of conversation mentality, and we have to find that this is possible. But you have to, our project was having all those columns, and then 24 meter deep, digged by hand, 2 meter deep diameter. There are 75 holes like this, 24 meter high, and then they finished it. And they put all these things, and they always change them, because you don't see sometimes what's in 10 meter, for example, you find another thing, and then you have to show it, and you change the place of the column, which means you change the project. You change the structural project, you change everything. And we changed 75 times the layout in the 75 columns. And afterwards we found 75 points which can be usable, 2 meter diameter, and then we put all these columns, and we created a new level of putting those rooms, and we put everything which used to be on the ground level, like restaurants, like ballrooms and the gardens and everything, to the top, and then it's vice versa, let's say. And then we did something like this. I'm very enthusiastic, and the construction is going on very surprisingly, because in this area, with all those problems of silane board and everything, I hope the owner will live until the end of this project, but we all are very enthusiastic about the project for the moment, and people are waiting for the final.
Thank you very much for your lecture. I'm interested to know how do you solve the acoustic problems in this mosque, because we know in the praying ceremony and speech of the is very important.
Yeah, as I said before, for this simplicity, I mean, reaching to this simplicity is not a simple question, and then we worked with British acoustical engineers in this thing, and then they warned us in every square meter, and in every material, and in every shape of the material also. But fortunately, I mean, they didn't made us big problems, and then we made it in a good way. They are from Arup.
Good evening and welcome. Thank you for the lecture. My name is Ilir. I'm Arnold as well. I would like to ask a question regarding this, your last project that you showed to us. How much of Londonization is in this project? And
100%.
And is there any trace of kind of protest towards what's going on right now in Turkey, also in this project? So it's a little bit political.
Yeah, I understand very well.
Thank you.
You know, this project has been published in Germany very fondly, and in Süddeutsche Zeitung, in the newspaper, and the topic was instead of Erdogan's intentions, this mosque has been done. Frankly, I didn't do this. I mean, I didn't think that. And secondly, I can say that the owners of this, I mean, the investor of this foundation is a very close friend of Prime Minister. And the Prime Minister saw the project, and he liked that, surprisingly. But he said, I will come to open this mosque. And I was surprised, because I was thinking that he wants to collapse the building when he saw the project. He said that I will come and open the project, open the mosque, and I will pray here. And it was my biggest problem, because as an architect you have to go and pray with him, and I don't want to pray. And I was always looking for some international lectures to be out of Turkey when he was opening the mosque. I mean, by chance, because of all these corruptions and all these big things going on in Turkey, he was not able to come to open the mosque. He was very busy about the tapes and the son's corruptions and the other things, and it went like this. So, coming back to your question, I used the sentence of, or I made up, or I structured the sentence of Londonization, having some parallel ideas or parallel aspects with the big transformation in London and big transformation in Istanbul. And I made up this sentence because both the cities are transformed when they were governed by conservative parties. And this is a very ironic thing, in my opinion. When you say yourself conservative, you have to be conservative on changing everything and changing the urban texture and maybe destroying the city. But they did it. For that reason, I made up this Londonization thing. And I don't think that there is a similarity in this project. But if you say, if I have to make up another word for this one, I wouldn't say Londonization, but I don't know. We can think about that. Maybe you can help me.
Pyetje tjetër, I think it was more like Japanization.
Okay. Somebody can say more like Nordic things, because people say that. Somebody can say that this is kind of antiquitization. I mean, I'm okay with all of this.
There's no more question. Thank you very much.